Welcome to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast, where you get help and guidance through the chaos of parenting a child with anxiety or OCD. This show is for educational purposes and is not intended to replace the guidance of a qualified professional. Here's your host, child therapist, Natasha Daniels.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about those really rough bedtime, nighttime struggles with your child or teen with OCD. It's funny, I did a reel that I didn't think was going to do that great, where I'm coming in and out of a door, stuck in a loop with my daughter. It was actually kind of based off of my own experience as a parent, saying, I love you too, I love you too, I'll see you tomorrow. And it was like this round and round you go. And it was just one of those reels like, when OCD gets you stuck on a loop before bedtime. And it did so good. I mean, so many people resonated with that. And the number one comment I got on that reel was, what do we do? What do we do if that happens? And, I hate when I do a reel and then I want to give advice, but you can't answer something in a quick comment. It feels like non-therapeutic and really not clinically sound to just be like, just do this, because it's much more detailed than that. So I said, I'll do a podcast episode on it. And this is the podcast episode, because apparently I'm not the only one dealing with this. And this is a very, very common struggle. And when you're tired, you're exhausted, and your child is tired and they're exhausted, dealing with this loop can be so draining. So we're going to get all into it today, and I'll talk to you about what it looks like for different people, why it happens, and most importantly, what do you do about it? But before we get started, just a couple of announcements. I do want to thank NoCD for sponsoring this episode. NoCD offers affordable, effective, convenient therapy, and they're available in the US and outside the US. You can schedule your free 15-minute consultation to see if NoCD is the right fit for you and your child. Just go to treatmyocd.com. That is treatmyocd.com. And if you would love an incredibly warm, supportive, responsive community and be able to text and message me on tap whenever you are struggling or confused or wanting guidance or wanting to vent, and you want most of my classes for free and you want to jump on calls with me in a community, we actually do have that. It's called the AT Parenting Community. And I love this community. It has grown and developed over the past 6 years. We now have an app, and this app is just popping. It sounds like such a weird thing to say, but the app has really been a game changer for even people who have been members for like 4 or 5 years, because it's just so easy to message me in the app, and it's so easy to tap into other parents. And it's so easy to jump on our Zoom calls because it's just a button that you press on the app. And if you want in-depth support, we only open up the community 4 times a year. So every quarter, every 3 months, that's a quarter, right? But if our waitlist gets too big, we open it in between. And those are private. We only open it up to the waitlist. We don't publicly announce that we're opening it. It's just for people who put their name on the waitlist. And so we do that because we don't have a cap of how many people can join our community, because it's digital. And so we can have 10,000 people in there and support all of you, but we don't. That would be a little overwhelming, but not impossible. I would just hire more staff. Right now, it's just me and the AT Parenting Community Manager, Ayla, and we have some help with Lynn as well. But I answer all the clinical questions. There's no one else in there clinically, and it's perfectly manageable. We typically have about 1,000 members, and in the app, we only have about half of those. And so I would love for you to be part of that. I'm not going to say anything, but I will tell you that the waitlist was big. And so we may or may not be opening it up for the next day or two, or just day, actually, I think at this point. It may have already been opened. So get on the waitlist, and then you'll get the information, because that information is only going out to the waitlist. You can check that out at atparentingcommunity.com. When you go to that website, you will have to put your name on the wait list. And if the wait list is open, which it may be right now, but it's closing very, very soon, to be honest, you will get an email from there saying, hey, we may or may not be open. Here is the link to join. But when we do close the wait list, that it is firmly closed as well. So all that to say, if you need support right now, we may got you. I don't think that's proper English, but I would love to see you over there. All right, let's jump into today. Bedtime is the worst. Let me just preface this with bedtime is so rough for most of us, or for some of us, because you're exhausted and you're so tired that your anchoring and your ability to be grounded and respond with this love and intention and patience is out the window, or at least it's for me. I mean, I have 3 kids with anxiety and OCD. My oldest had so many sleep issues and so much dysregulation at night. She's 21 now, so I don't have to deal with that. She can stay up as late as she wants, and I don't hear about it. But we went through the ringer with every child. Actually, more so my oldest daughter and my youngest daughter. My son, he struggled too. I guess he had a lot of anticipatory. He had some anxiety at night too. You know what? It was all 3 of them. The more I think about it, we're in a good place right now, but I want to tell you how we got there, because it wasn't always smooth sailing, and it may not be smooth sailing again because I am just a realist. But let's talk about this. So the reason why bedtime and nighttime is so hard in general is because just like we're exhausted and we're tired and we have no fight left in us and we have no patience left in us, it is the same thing for our kids with anxiety and OCD. They're tired. When they're tired, they are unable to handle those thoughts and those feelings in a regulated way. Also, they're not as distracted. Things are calming down. Everything's winding down. You know, they're not being overstimulated and over distracted. And that creates a very blank stage with a big fat microphone for anxiety and OCD. So those intrusive thoughts and feelings become very loud very easily because it has an open mic and there's not a lot of competition. The other thing is that a lot of kids have some fears that are specific to nighttime. And so a lot of kids with OCD will have rituals they have to do at night for all sorts of reasons, depending on their theme. I have worked with kids who have these very long rituals of what they have to do before they're able to go to bed for lots of different themes. So I've had kids who have a lot of checking behavior for safety reasons. I have to check and make sure that, you know, all the plugs are pulled out of the sockets, and I have to check that my homework is actually in my bag 4 times, because what if I forgot? I have to check that the sink isn't dripping. So I have to make sure that the faucet is on and off and on and off. I have to check that my area rug isn't lifted partly up because someone can trip on it and they might hurt themselves. And so I have to check that. So that's an example of somebody who has a lot of checking behavior. I've had kids who are worried about the next day, kids with the emetophobia, the fear of throwing up, or kids with magical thinking. If I don't do X, Y, and Z, something bad's going to happen. And so I've had kids with emetophobia, you know, have to fix their closet door, has to be just in the right angle, and they have to say certain things in their heads, and they have to organize their stuffed animals in just the right way to prevent something bad from happening. I have had kids who are afraid that if they go to sleep, they may never wake up. Sometimes it's anxiety and sometimes it's OCD. But when they have magical thinking attached to it, I need to make sure that my mom knows I love her. And I have to say, I love you in a certain way. And she has to say, I love you back in a certain way in order for her to be safe or for me to be safe. Now we're moving into the realm of OCD, because OCD is bossy. It tells people that they have to do things to get that brief relief. And anxiety is just, oh gosh, what if this happens? So at night, it's escalated for all sorts of reasons. A lot of kids get nauseous at night and overwhelmed at night, so they start to not feel well at night. Again, big mic on a blank stage for anxiety and OCD to really boom their message. And there is a scary feeling for some kids too about going to bed. It's dark, it's quiet, there's strange noises. A lot of our kids might have fear of safety. What if the house burns down? What if somebody breaks in? What if I go to bed before my parents, or my parents go to bed before me? I see it both ways, depending on the child. Something bad might happen to me. Something bad might happen to them. A lot. Sensory motor OCD, I didn't even get into that one, where What if I have to pee? And so I want to make sure that I got all the pee out of my bladder. So I'm sitting up and I'm going back to the bathroom, back to the bathroom, back to the bathroom, just to make sure all that pee is out. Because if I don't, what if I can't handle it? What if it wakes me up at night? What if it ruins my sleep? What if it's not perfect? So that's just the tip of the iceberg. And that's a big iceberg, right? So maybe some of those are your flavor. I mean, the thing about OCD is that it can show up in so many different ways, but yet the foundation is still the same. And we want to always remember that. That's why I like to give a lot of examples, because there's always a parent out there who says, she's not talking to me. She didn't mention my child's struggle. And it's impossible to name and give an example to every single OCD struggle. But I want to show you the flavors of them. But it doesn't matter, because in general, OCD starts with an intrusive thought or feeling, and there is the anxiety or discomfort that builds up, and then the need to do something or avoid something to get brief relief. That might be a mental compulsion, a physical compulsion, a compulsion that involves you, or some avoidance. And then the more they do that compulsion, the more intrusive thoughts and feelings they get, the more distress they get, the more compulsions they do, the more intrusive thoughts and feelings they get, the more distress they get, the more compulsions they do. You see the cycle? You can visualize it. Okay, so that's the problem. So let's talk about what this might look like with you. So you are the metaphorical sink. I say that a lot because I want parents to get out of the stereotype of OCD and understand that they are a component to that cycle I just mentioned. And so when they are doing that thing to get that brief relief, it involves you. That's our part. Not always, obviously. There's some gazillion compulsions that have nothing to do with you. But at night, when we get stuck in a loop, and what we're talking about today on this episode is when you get stuck in the loop with them. And so you're stuck in the compulsion bubble. So let me give you some examples. One might be the repeating goodnight rituals. The one that I actually did the reel on Instagram, which, by the way, if you're not following me, follow me, because I do new reels every single freaking day. That's a lot of reels. So somebody should be watching them. And they're like bite-sized educational reels every single day. I actually changed my handle, which might have been stupid, but I'm like, yeah, you know where to find me. I was at AT Parenting Survival, which is the stupidest name I could have ever created. If I was smart back in 2015, I would have never called myself AT Parenting Survival, because it doesn't really tell you what I do. So I'm trying to get better handles on my social media. So if you're looking for me now, you won't find me at AT Parenting Survival, because I'm not there anymore. You'll find me at Child OCD Therapist. Ooh, isn't that good? Who wouldn't want to look for a child OCD therapist? So yeah, find me on Instagram. I'm actually on TikTok too. So if you love TikTok, or if you like YouTube, I changed my YouTube channel and I've made it purely for parents. I'm going to keep all the old videos that I have for kids and teens and young adults. And if I feel like I need to make another one for kids, teens, and young adults, I will. But I have over, I think 500 videos for kids, teens, and young adults. I'm pivoting that channel and I'm making it a small video advice for parents. So if you love this podcast and you're like, ooh, I can get double Natasha if you prefer. I don't know if you want double Natasha. Or I want a shorter digestible Natasha, and I love video. Check out my YouTube channel as well. I don't know why I went on this tangent about my social media. I'm so sorry. But follow me on Instagram at Child OCD Therapist. And if you go to youtube.com/@ChildOCDTherapist, I'm on YouTube that way as well. So uniform, so beautiful. Okay. So when I was doing that reel, that's what I was giving you an example of that repeating goodnight ritual. And this is a loop. A lot of times it could be like they want it to feel just right. Sometimes just for it to feel just right. Like I just need it to feel just right. And sometimes they need to feel it just right to prevent something bad from happening. So you don't always have that second component. And sometimes you don't have the just right component. Sometimes they just need you to do this and then bam, nothing bad's going to happen. We're good to go. So it can look different. With my daughter, this actually started out of trauma. She already had OCD, but after her dad died, it was understandable that she was really worried. She had already been worried in the past about bedtime issues. She felt nauseous at night. She already had bedtime issues. And then it didn't help that her dad, my husband, died in his sleep. Well, he technically didn't. I found him unresponsive, but we don't have to get into that. But from her perspective, he went to bed and he never woke up. So of course OCD's like, this is horrific. We're gonna hijack this thing and make it a compulsion. And so it was heartbreaking because I knew it was OCD, but also her needing reassurance was understandable. So she would say, I love you. I'd say, I love you. She'd say, I love you too. And I have to say, I love you too. And then she'd say, I'll see you tomorrow. And I had to say exactly, I'll see you tomorrow. And if I didn't say, I'll see you tomorrow, she would start to rev up and be like, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. And if I said, okay, love you, that was not it. I had to say, I will see you tomorrow. And in her mind, if I didn't, something bad would happen. She also had existential OCD issues where, and this was, I think, before my husband passed away, where her OCD would convince her that I wasn't who I was. So I'd be tucking her in and she'd be like, what's my mom's favorite color? At first I thought she was trying to be funny because she has a really funny sense of humor. And I'd be like, I don't know. What does your mom like? And she's like, no, Mom, answer that. What's your favorite color? And it turned out after we had some discussion about it that her OCD was making her think that I was possibly a robot or an imposter and that only her mom can answer these questions. And so that was just another example of something that popped up at night. Now that could pop up any time, but more vulnerable at night when I'm tucking her in. Some other things that kids have, especially more pronounced at bedtime, these things can certainly happen outside of bedtime, but these things are more pronounced. That confessing behavior, a lot of times kids dump. They OCD compulsively dump at night. And so they will tell you all of the bad things they could have possibly thought or have done that day to rid themselves of the guilt. And that's a really common thing with moral or scrupulosity OCD, where you have intrusive thoughts that you may have done something bad, that you might do something bad. And the relief sometimes is getting reassurance. Hey, I did this today. Do you think that was bad? Or I saw my friends do this. Do you think that was bad because I didn't say anything? Or they confess it. I thought this today. I thought that today. I accidentally stepped on this today. And you just have to listen, and that becomes part of the compulsion. Another one is mentally checking or replaying the day. And so they might want to review the day with you in a very compulsive way. Sometimes there's a lot of prayers or mental compulsions at night that may involve you. And all of this, regardless of what it is, gets you on this cycle and this loop. And so you can get stuck into it. And it escalates because you're tired. And I've got quite a few members of the AT parenting community who have messaged me in the last month who have said that their kids are having huge anger outbursts at night and they're waking up the other kids. And part of it, and this was multiple parents in my community. I almost thought it was the same person. I had to go back and check the names because I was like, this is the same question I just got and answered an hour ago. And it's just different people with the same exact problem. But they'll say, it's taking them hours to do their compulsions at night. And for some of them, the parent is involved. But for a couple of them, the parent was not involved. But the parent's like, no, you're supposed to go to bed at this time. And they set the boundary and they put the pressure on. And then the child, in this case, I think teens, would get really aggressive, slamming doors and doing things. And then that wakes up the other kids. And so then it's like, is this a behavior problem? Is this a discipline problem? Or is this an OCD problem? And so it wreaks havoc in the entire house. And it upsets people, understandably so. So that can be an issue too, even when it doesn't involve you. And spoiler alert, that's an OCD problem, not a behavior problem. You want to address the OCD. And we're going to be talking about that as we go through this episode. The other OCD trap that does happen a lot is the just one more trap. Just one more hug, just one more check, just one more answer, just one more reassurance. And you get stuck on that loop of, I already answered that. But it's never enough for OCD. And so even though when we give in that moment, it feels like success because our child calms down, they regulate, they are not as anxious, they stop panicking, they stop melting down, and they go to bed. And so it can feel like this is the right response. I should give in to this. I should do this. I should participate in this because at the end, they go to bed. But the problem is when you have gotten looped into this, it fuels the OCD long term. And that is the hardest part is it's kind of like, and I always equate OCD to a mosquito bite because this is so true. It feels so good to scratch a mosquito bite. Have you ever had like just a really bad mosquito bite or mosquito bites? And you're just like, oh, this feels so good when you're scratching it. And then before you know it, you're like, oh, I scratched too hard. And now the skin is raw or it's exposed and you've kind of ripped the top part of the skin. And now it burns and it hurts, but it still itches. It actually itches a lot more. And now you're like, oh, I can't scratch because I'm going to be ripping my skin. Has that ever happened to you or is that just me? That's OCD. It feels good in the moment for you and for your child. Maybe not for you if you intellectually know, this is a no-no, but it does feel good for your child. And it does feel good as far as just getting that relief. It's like a siren is on and you just found the turn it off button. And that feels like relief. But long-term, it's creating more OCD and we don't want long-term struggles. Okay. So what actually does help? Let's dive into that. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
It's time we put help directly in our kids' hands. Introducing Crushing OCD course for kids and teens.
It was way more helpful than all the other therapy we've ever done because we didn't really know what to do. So we weren't really doing it before. So the course helped to figure out what the exposures are and how to do them.
We're not in therapy and find it really hard to find an ERP trained therapist here. So we're currently with like the public health service, but again, they don't seem to be trained in ERP. It's filled that gap that we don't have that was desperately needed.
This was really well timed for us to use between therapists and to help us get off to a good start with this new practice.
It was easy to use. I was able to do it from my phone or also on the computer.
There's different ages, so there were younger kids, there were teenagers, and so that was really nice too, to have a variety of ages where it wasn't just geared towards younger kids or older kids. It was a nice variety.
It's helpful for our kids to hear it from this third party as opposed to just us saying it.
I really like the offense and defense method. I love working on poking at OCD while it's sleeping. It makes it a little bit easier to do and it's kind of fun. I'm planning on using it to work on my fear of holding or touching batteries and stuff like that.
So it was really helpful and I think a lot of other kids would like it. I thought that I was the only one who had worrying about the weather and stuff. And then there was somebody else on there who worried about the same thing, which was really helpful.
Seems less scary to work on stuff now that I've watched this class and I'm more interested to work on it.
I like trying to do more exposures still and before I wasn't, I just didn't want to do them.
I've worked on some of my bigger compulsions and been successful.
I realized that it was helpful to do the exposures. Before it was really, really hard. It's still hard, but it's helpful to know that I need to do them.
Before there would be a lot of battles about it, so it is definitely less loggerheads.
Really, really good course and super helpful.
Definitely would recommend this. It's really easy to follow. It's nice bite-sized videos. I really like the worksheets that go along with it, and I think it's really helpful.
To learn more about this course and register your child or teen, go to atparentingsurvivalschool.com.
Welcome back. All right, so we know all about how ugly this looks. We know why it happens, how it happens, and how we get sucked into it. You're like, but what now, Natasha? Well, let's talk about what actually helps. More often than not, I will tell parents this is not a bedtime issue. This is an OCD issue showing up at bedtime. I don't know why I paused at bed. Separate from the kids that are scared of the dark and scared they're not going to wake up at night, even that's still an OCD anxiety issue. But a lot of times this compulsive checking, this compulsive looping, the compulsive confessing, the sensory motor going to the bathroom, this is OCD just showing up at night. And so it's not a bedtime issue. It's an OCD issue showing up at bedtime, right? That makes sense. And so working on the issue in the middle of the issue happening is the hardest time to work on an issue. It's better to work on it when it's not happening. It's hard to work on it at night. That's not your first step. It's your third or fourth step. And so the first step is understanding how this is OCD and how it's showing up. So psychoeducation about OCD. And what is their core fear around this? What is their OCD theme around this? Is there a way that we can do exposure response prevention, which is a type of cognitive behavioral therapy and the evidence-based therapeutic approach for OCD? Can I do an exposure for this particular core fear? So if you don't know what ERP is, I do have lots of videos on that. And it's also really helpful to go get a therapist who's an ERP trained therapist. But if you need advice on ERP, you can go to my website at AT Parenting Survival. I can't get rid of it. And actually, atparentingsurvival.com redirects from anxioustoddlers.com. So if you've ever wanted to know why I'm AT, I know I'm going on some pretty big tangents today, but I started off as anxioustoddlers.com back in 2015 when I wrote a book on how to parent your anxious toddler. And I quickly pivoted to kids and teens and young adults with OCD and anxiety, but I couldn't get rid of the domain. And so I was stuck with anxious toddlers. So then I was like, okay, I'll just abbreviate it, anxious toddlers to teens, and then I'll call it AT, which was a very messy rebranding. And that's where AT Parenting Survival came from. Horrible, and I wish I could fix it. But go to atparentingsurvival.com. It'll reroute you to anxioustoddlers.com, unfortunately. And then there is a search button at the very bottom of my website. Type in ERP, and you will get a bunch of resources on ERP. All right, just to help fill in the gap for those of you that are new here. And then you want to talk to your child. So let's go back up to, I say go back up because I'm looking at my notes, to some of these themes. For my daughter and her feeling like if she doesn't say I love you and I say I love you back and she says see you tomorrow and I say see you tomorrow, let's just take that for as an example. I won't be able to go through all the different themes I shared with you. We'll just use this one as an example. Replace this one with your issue and you'll know what to do. But the first thing is I have a conversation with her. And well, I guess the very, very first thing is I recognize that it's OCD. And I said to her, I notice at night that when you say I love you and I have to say I love you back, that we get stuck in a loop. And I have to say, I'll see you tomorrow. And you have to say, I see you tomorrow. And if you don't know what's going on, ask your child, I wonder what would happen if I didn't say I love you back? Or what would happen if I didn't listen to those confessions, if that's what your child is doing? Or what would happen if you didn't go to the bathroom for the 15th time? Or what would happen if you didn't check your backpack and all the plugs? Or what would happen if you didn't outline everything that you did that day that you thought was bad? What does OCD say will happen? That's a great question, especially if you say, what does OCD say will happen? If they're not too triggered by that. Some kids are triggered by that because you're separating them from OCD. And in some ways you're saying, I know that you don't think this, but what does OCD think? Because there is a lot of shame and embarrassment in thinking, I have this irrational thought, and so when you cushion it with what does OCD say, for some kids that makes them more communicative. So with my daughter, I said, what does OCD say will happen if I didn't say I love you too, or I didn't say I'll see you again tomorrow? And at the time, I think she called her OCD O Cloud. Since then, she's been calling it just OCD. She doesn't really personify it, but personification can really help. And she said, well, my OCD says if you don't say it in that exact way, that you're going to die and I won't see you again, which the trauma attached to that also makes sense. And she was in grief therapy and she was in grief groups. So she was getting the therapy that she needed for that. You don't need a trauma. She had sensory motor OCD. She'd go to the bathroom a million times. And I would, before her dad died, and I'd say, what does OCD say will happen if you don't go to the bathroom for the 15th time? And she would say, OCD says I'll never be comfortable and I won't be able to have a good night's sleep. That's been kind of a theme for her throughout her life is I need to feel perfect. It'll be ruined if I'm not in a perfect mood. It'll be ruined if I'm not in a good mood. It'll be ruined if I have to feel like I have to go to the bathroom, that kind of thing. So once you have the conversation with your child of what does OCD say will happen if X, Y, and Z is not done, now you have some data of, okay, this is the core fear around this. And what OCD theme is around this, and understanding those things are so important. Parents just need, I know this is really hard, but need to take the time to educate themselves on OCD. And that you are doing that because you're listening to my podcast, but reading a good book like Talking Back to OCD by John March, it's an oldie but goodie. or take one of my courses, like how to teach kids to crush OCD. Like just get your education somewhere so that you understand these things. And then with my daughter, I said, when I respond and I say, I love you too, and I get stuck in that loop with you for like 20, 30 minutes, I go, do you think I'm helping you with your OCD or do you think I'm making it worse? Now, luckily, my daughter is at a place, or she was even at a place at that time. This was a while ago. This was about 4 years ago when he died, that she's so well educated about OCD. I mean, I'm sure it's pretty like annoying to have me as a mom. And so she said the right answer. Your kids may not, but she said, no, I'm growing my OCD. And I said, we are, and so when I respond and I complete the loop, I'm participating in that. I'm doing my part in growing your O cloud. And I love you. And the last thing I want to do is grow your O cloud. And so I said, from now on, when you say that, I will go back and forth 3 times. And then the 4th time I will stop. And no matter what, I'm just going to walk away. And that'll be really hard for me. And I know it'll be really hard for you, but I'm not going to come back and I'm not going to answer. And so telling them, and that's just an example. You don't have to say those exact words. What you may have noticed is I didn't say I'm not going to do it at all. Baby steps. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it only this amount of times and then I'm going to stop because I want to ease her into me not doing it anymore. I don't want to wait until I get frustrated and then I scream, I'm not saying this anymore. I'm tired. Go to bed. That's not intentional. That's not therapeutic. But when I calmly say, this is our plan tonight and from now on, when this happens, I'm going to repeat this 3 times because I know it's really hard for me it's hard for you to not hear it, but that is it. 3 times and then OCD doesn't get fed anymore. And then I might go to 2 times. Then I'm going to go to 1 time and I'm going to stay at 1 time. We're not going to go back and forth. That number might look different for each one of you depending on how severe it is. And you might be talking about different things. You might be talking about confessing. So you might say, I will sit and listen to OCD confess, and I will sit and grow OCD with you. I like that language because I think it really highlights what's happening for 10 minutes. I'll put the timer on. And now if that's too stressful and that feels really weird, don't do that. But keep yourself honest to the boundary that you set, because when you are consistent and when you are reliable in what you say, you're sending a message to your child and OCD that what you say is what you mean and that there is no wiggle room. There's no meltdown that can persuade you to change, because when that limit comes and goes and your child whines and screams and gets aggressive and you're scared the neighbors are going to wake up and you cave, what you have done inadvertently is strengthened that behavior. It's pure behavior modification 101. It's like psychology 101. When you give in, it's like parenting 101. When you have a toddler and they want that cookie or they want that piece of candy at the shop at the checkout lane, and they are rolling on the floor for like 30 minutes. And then you're like, just get up here. You can have it. We've all been there. And then you've just reinforced that tantrum. And I've had relatives where they have older kids and they'll be like, I don't know why they tantrum. And I'll be like, I do. I've watched you reinforce a 30, 40-minute meltdown by giving them what they wanted after 40 minutes. You just encouraged a 40-minute meltdown. None of us want to encourage a meltdown, but we get so run down and exhausted that we do. And so only stick to what you say and only say what you can stick with. And that's a really good motto to live with OCD is I'm not going to say I'm going to do it if I can't stick with it. And so if you're not sure, then say something really small first, something ridiculously small. Like you can say it 15, 20 times and then I'm going to stop. Maybe count first one night and see what is the average? How long are you going back and forth? But there may not be an exact number. But once you say it, like when I said to her, after 3 times, I'm not going to come back. And I remember walking away and I can hear her, I'll see you tomorrow. And because of the grief on top of it, and I had my own reaction and grief to that as well, because that was hard for me. But I knew going back in there and saying what she wanted me to say was not the right answer. And so I would say, I actually couldn't say nothing because it was too hard. I would say, I'm not going to answer that. Or I love you. I'm not going to answer that. And I could say I love you because that wasn't part of what she was wanting. Her OCD was wanting me to say, I will see you tomorrow in that very specific way. So 2 nights or 3 nights of doing that, and her OCD got the message, my mom's not going to say that. And so that issue went away because the boundary was set. It doesn't always work that fast, but it's outlining what you will do, how you're going to respond, and being consistent. Now, separate from that, it is really helpful to do exposures during the day around that OCD theme. The work happens during the day. And so if your child has sensory motor OCD and they're going pee 25 billion times a day, she had that. We did exposures during the day where she would see if she could hold off and not go to the bathroom for a full hour. That was really hard for her. We started off with 10 minutes, maybe even 5 minutes. That's how severe it was. And we built up. If it is moral OCD, doing moral exposures and getting to the core fear of what they're afraid of, which is often, if it's related to God, it's like I'm going to disappoint God, or I might be going to hell. Or if it's not religious based, it might be everyone's not going to love me anymore. They might have particular triggers like curse words or a whole bunch of stuff. But getting into the weeds of their theme, that's kind of what my course teaches. And I actually do have a moral OCD course, but I tell people take the foundational one first. But learning how to do exposures at home, which I teach in my course at atparentingsurvivalschool.com. See, AT Parenting Survival. I cannot get rid of it. atparentingsurvivalschool.com. But when you learn how to do exposures, you do them during the day. And even for just right OCD, you make things not just right. And then they learn how to tolerate it more at night. So remembering that the goal is to see that it's OCD showing up at night versus having a hard time at night. And then doing exposures in the day to address the OCD theme and core fear, which you might need a little bit extra support on. We can't cover everything in every episode, but that's where you'd want to go with that. And then planning how the evening will go, and hold on to your stomach because it's about to get bumpy. When you do not do what OCD wants you to do at night, OCD will have a tantrum, and OCD will test you, and it will say, oh yeah, what will you do if I get really loud? What will you do if I wake up the other kids? What will you do if I wake up the neighbors? What will you do if I get really physical and aggressive and violent? And you have to have a plan for all of that. You know, what will happen? Like, I wasn't worried about my daughter getting loud or aggressive or waking the neighbors. That wasn't my issue with her, but these are things that I hear from other parents in my community. And if you don't have a plan for that, then you're going to be caught off guard and you're going to cave. And when you cave, you're caving to OCD, not your child, and you're growing the neural pathways that continue to develop stronger OCD issues. And so it's not that we can undo this overnight because it didn't happen overnight. It's slow. It's like one small step at a time. But it is really important to realize that you participating in those loops, even the hugs, those are so hard. Can I have just one more hug? Just one more hug. Eventually, you're not hugging your child. You're hugging OCD. Or just one more prayer, just one more prayer, just one more prayer. You're not praying to God with your child. You're praying to OCD. Look at it like that, because compulsions are compulsions, regardless of whether they feel like love. I love you too. I love you too. I need one more hug, one more hug, one more hug. You're not saying no to your child's love. You're not saying no to your child's prayers to God. You're saying no to OCD. And that is powerful, and that creates long-term success with our kids. Well, I hope that you found that helpful. I know it's so hard. Trust me, I get it. I've been there. Luckily, we're not there right now, because when I say something, I'm pretty consistent, or at least I try. That is the magic sauce. If you are finding this podcast helpful, don't forget to rate it, hit a star, write a review. I greatly appreciate it. I always like to read a review before I go if I have them, and I can't remember which review I left on. I don't think I read these two, so I'm going to read them. And if you leave a review, I might be reading yours next time, or I definitely will, because I'm going to read these right now. I want to thank Hey for writing support like you won't believe. I discovered Natasha Daniels' podcast about 2 months ago whilst trying to find ways to support my 14-year-old son. I cannot explain how great her podcast, YouTube videos, and AT parenting community really is. I no longer feel alone in this. The resources and content she has created is incredible. Thank you, Natasha. Oh, thank you. Hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to write that. And I also want to thank Icklepay, who wrote, "This is the podcast you need." Natasha is very practical and down to earth. She's easy to understand and her ideas are easy to implement. She is a support you and your child need. Oh, I really appreciate that one too. So if you write a review, I'll be reading yours next time. I hope that you find the sparkle in everything you do. And I'll talk to you again next Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. To get additional support raising a child with anxiety or OCD, visit Natasha's online school of on-demand classes at atparentingsurvivalschool.com.